Welcome to Building Birmingham Together, a show about Birmingham's business leaders, successes, failures, and lessons learned to encourage you to remember that dreaming is free, but the hustle is sold separately. I'm your host, Kim Lee, founder and CEO of Forge. Today, I'm joined by David Fleming. David is the president and CEO of REV Birmingham. REV Birmingham is a place-based revitalization agency and economic development nonprofit with a mission to create vibrant commercial districts in the city of Birmingham. Building Birmingham Together is brought to you today by Forge. Forge is Birmingham's first professional co-working space located in the heart of downtown Birmingham at the Pizitz Building. With private offices, open workspaces, as well as meeting and event space, Forge is the place where small business owners and entrepreneurs come together, meet new people, and get work done. If you would like to find out more about Forge, you can visit workatforge.com. Now to the interview. David, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I am excited about being here. This is going to be fun.
Oh, great. I think so too. Well, okay. I first want to jump into, I gave a brief intro of the mission of REV Birmingham, but there is a lot packed in there. So I would love if you could take a little time and break down what REV Birmingham does. I take for granted just that I'm familiar with your organization, but I know that a lot of people have heard the name, but maybe not are aware of all that you do and why you do what you do.
Right, and I do think that a lot of people maybe touch Rev in a particular way and see us from that angle, but don't know all the other stuff. And so I appreciate the opportunity to give it comprehensively. But as an organization that's focused on place revitalization, we're an economic development agency, but very, very place specific. And so focusing on downtown Birmingham and then neighborhood commercial districts. So the places we serve tend to be more Main Street, historic Main Street or downtown kinds of places. Like we're not the industrial park people. We're not, doing malls or something like that. And our mission in revitalizing urban commercial districts is about bringing vibrancy to those places. And we define vibrant as, where diverse people and authentic places meet. A lot of economic development sort of separated in, you're focusing on job creation or you're just focusing on urban planning or something like that. But this is really the intersection of the two, because you can have a wonderful place, but if there are no people there, there's no vibrancy. But the people want to be in a place that is clean and safe. It's maintained well. It's an interesting place to be, and so that's where you get, I think, the best vibrancy. But Rev's work is multifaceted, but we tend to boil it all down to three main areas. One of those is supporting business owners, and so we do a lot of work around entrepreneurship and trying to help people realize their dreams. And we tend to focus on a lot of those types that are lifestyle businesses or retail types of businesses, those that you might see filling up a storefront, and really growing those kinds of small businesses are a really important part of we always say that those are the businesses that make the city cool. Those are the businesses that you need to have in order to attract the workforce and retain the workforce and the talent and the businesses you want. But the other kind of business that we work with are people doing real estate development, because that's really placemaking. If you're a real estate developer, you're really a placemaker because you're developing place. And so we do a lot of work around placemaking. So the second thing would be what we call creating experiences. Creating great experiences, and that might be an event or a street market or something like the bike share program, which we ran for 5 years. And the purpose of that is not just to create a cool event and have fun. Our purposes in doing them, if we're going to do them, are to hopefully reveal market potential or be a catalyst to create that market potential. Bike share is a great example of that. Before bike share, nobody thought it made any sense to have bikes running around. Birmingham's not going to work. Well, it did reveal that there's a desire for that. There's a great opportunity for multimodalism and all that. So, and then the third piece is just about focusing on authentic place. Is the public realm in good shape? Is the private realm, private buildings occupied in good shape, and working on that real physical piece? So really all of our initiatives that we do, and we are working under we have a kind of a 3-year plan, strategic plan we're working under now. They all fall in, one or more of those buckets.
So I'm guessing that it took a lot of thought and trial, maybe errors, to really hone in on that mission and really what keeps y'all focused on the decisions that you make and the projects that you take on. Can you share a little bit about that journey and what it was like to really dial it in?
Well, yeah, and that involves maybe a mix of the historical journey of the organization, but also sort of my personal historical journey.
Yeah.
In that, our organization's roots really go back to 1957, when the Birmingham Downtown Improvement Association was created. You think about it, after World War II, there was a lot of suburban growth starting. Automobile orientation was fueling that. I believe that at that point, it had been announced that the first mall would be built, Eastwood Mall. And all the downtown merchants, because there were a lot of downtown merchants and commerce folks at the time, were like, we really got to focus on making downtown competitive, and or we're going to lose out on all this suburban growth. So they created this organization that was trying to foster those visions, and it evolved a lot over the years. After the 1960s, when there was this feeling that we really needed to transform Birmingham because of the civil rights movement, and there was a task force called Operation New Birmingham that was created. That task force, actually, they renamed the whole organization around that, and that was for up until about 2012. There was Operation New Birmingham, and it was focused on downtown development. In the meantime, I'm a Birmingham native. I grew up actually in Bessemer on the west side. I was a kid there, but I went to Vestavia High School because my dad was a teacher. I developed at some point a love for historic buildings. Some people are tree huggers. I'm a building hugger. I love historic buildings. So that kind of got me into this whole, why are the vacant buildings that I love? Why are the buildings I love vacant? Why, how do we get this economic vibrancy going, adaptive reuse? And so that led me into this work. I worked for Operation New Birmingham for a while after I graduated from Samford. And then when I was doing my master's at Birmingham Southern, I sort of wrote up an idea of how to do this in neighborhoods as well. I'll make this a very short story. Ultimately, the city decided we should do that. And so we created a Main Street Birmingham, which was focused on neighborhood commercial districts. And I was the first employee, started leading that, building that. At the retirement of my predecessor, it was a question, what should we do? And I thought we should try to merge the organizations so that we had one organization with the skill sets of place-based revitalization, but did not have just neighborhoods or downtown in mind. We kind of had the whole city, in view. And so the interests of downtown and the interests of neighborhoods were sort of, connected a little bit more. Plus, if you know Birmingham, history, we were a very fractured metropolis. We've got a lot of fractured interests and even sort of feeling of us versus them in a lot of senses. And so I thought it made sense to bring that under one umbrella. And the two boards agreed. The city kind of agreed at the time. Thought it'd be a good idea. So we merged and became REV Birmingham. And that led us to then trying to work on the vibrancy in multiple places, downtown and as well as various neighborhoods. Over time, we've worked in several neighborhoods. Right now, we tend to focus on downtown and then the Woodlawn Commercial District, because those are the places where we know we've got the quality of place that works for what we do. We have people in those places that are good partners that like to work with us, and we can work with them. And then we also have payers. I mean, that's a very practical part. We're a nonprofit, but you got to have money. Uh, if you're going to have mission, you got to have money. And so we got resources to do those things. So that's where we focus on those two places right now.
So have you all when Rev started, did y'all start with those two visions, Birmingham and Woodlawn, or how did
Well,
those two
at the
focuses
time,
come?
Main Street Birmingham was focused in 9 different commercial districts, and it's hard to call that focus, when you,
Yeah.
but we had a contract with the city, and there was the sense that we should, focus on, and you hear Mayor Woodfin saying this, and there are officially like 26 different commercial districts around the city of Birmingham, and we focused on or had some interest in developing in 9 of those, and then we merged with downtown. It kind of became 10, and that's a lot. It's ultimately it's too many, especially if you're not going to have millions of dollars to support your organization with, because you really need to. And this is one of those lessons learned. If
Yeah.
you're focused in a place, you've got to really be embedded there. I mean, you can't kind of swoop in and swoop out. I mean, it doesn't work that way. So if you can't, from a resource perspective, really be embedded in
Mhm.
that place, I don't think you're going to be successful in this kind of work. So anyway, that led us ultimately to, and as the city's priorities changed and all that, we kind of just focused in a little bit more and used those 3 Ps that I talked about to sort of define, where do we work. Well, the good thing about that matrix, though, is that it's expandable. I mean, if the 3 Ps emerge somewhere else, we can work there.
Right.
We got to
Okay.
have
Can
those.
you, those 3 Ps, I love those. Can you say those again? Like, this is what guides y'all in the areas where you choose to focus, and just touch on
Yeah.
those again, like why each one is so important.
Yeah, the first P is place. It's
Hmm.
like what I said earlier, we are more of the historic Main Street district kinds of place people. We're not going to do the industrial park place or something else. So we like those historic cores. And so that's a way of helping to define place, that our strategies sort of work or are tailored for that. The second P is people. Are the people in that place people that can work with us, want to work with us? We can really define who that is, are the key people and key players in that place. Can we work with them? And because it's important to be able to have a sort of community led or agreed upon vision for place. And then you build the tactics around trying to achieve that vision. So we know we've got to have that people element. If we aren't, together with some defined, key stakeholder element, then that's not going to work. And then the final P is payer. Somebody got to be paying,
Right.
or the resources that got to be there to support the work. And we have learned, perhaps the hard way, that if you don't have all 3,
Right.
it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I do love what you said, that you can't just swoop in to, it's easy to drive through an area and feel like, oh, there's so much that could happen here. But when you just swoop in, that's not how the change happens. And I love the focus that Rev has on really empowering the people and providing the resources for the people who are invested and embedded to really make a change in their city that they love.
Yeah.
So I think that's,
And a lot of these places where there's been historic disinvestment, obviously there's concerns
mhm,
that the people that have stayed around have. But the reality is the market has moved out of those places in ways that you end up with a lot of vacancy, um, and it will not, while we work very hard to make sure there are opportunities for people from within the community to be a part of the revitalization of that, maybe from starting a business standpoint or whatever. it's also going to require that, probably investors or people come in from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And we know full well that, if people are coming into the community from outside it, we've got to vet them and make sure they are engaged with key community partners and people, from the beginning, so that they, they aren't just coming in to do their thing, but they're coming to do a thing that really enhances the community quality of life.
So I have a question about something that you've touched on several times, and is the driving force of REV, this idea of having a vibrant city center.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it so important for a metropolis such as Birmingham to have a vibrant city center? Like, why is that so important rather than just letting the suburbs go and go?
Right. Well, I'll start by saying, from just a city perspective, we talk about the city of Birmingham and its neighborhoods. We operate from the belief that a strong, growing, vibrant downtown is essential for the neighborhoods to be healthy. At the same time, we believe that healthy neighborhoods help make downtown even more of what it could be, or even stronger. So we feel like there is a symbiotic relationship between the two. And so that's actually one reason why vibrant downtown is strong, or is important, because the neighborhoods need that. I mean, it's the closest opportunity for jobs and job creation. It's really important. But in a more macro sense, as far as the metro goes, really the downtown is and should be the heart and soul of the region. It's the historic birthplace of the city.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of cultural, history there, and a lot of what the city has become started there. A lot of the major institutions of the city, if you concentrate them in the downtown area, it's important. And frankly, the whole region gets a greater bang for the buck if downtown is vibrant. And now, for many years, people like me would make those arguments and say downtown is needed for the health of the whole city, the whole region. But thankfully, generally the culture and the economic development community sort of caught up with us real downtown geeks, because everybody's now understands how more important things like quality of life are to economic development. And downtown as a vibrant place is critical to the quality of life of a community and being in the city. We are competing as a region against many other regions, not just in the Southeast, but around the country. And the quality and the health and vibrancy of your downtown is either a competitive advantage or a competitive disadvantage. And it just is. And thankfully, a lot more people recognize that now. But it's going to help you succeed or fail in just economic development generally, because it's about a vibrant downtown helps you attract workforce and retain workforce. It helps you attract companies and retain companies in the city. And even if you're not located in downtown, you have an interest in downtown being vibrant because of all of those other reasons. And just look at what's happened in our downtown over the last decade. We have a downtown of roughly 80,000 employees. It's the largest single concentration of employment in the state of Alabama.
Wow.
In that 4 square mile area. We have a lot of sort of visible companies and brands that are important to the storytelling of Birmingham. We've had $2.5 billion of investment in the last decade, basically ever since Railroad Park opened in 2010. You make that a marker in time, $2.5 billion in investment, either public and private, which is, I'm quite sure, unprecedented. We now have 13,000 people living in downtown, whereas 10 years ago it was about 5 or 6.
Wow.
So we've doubled a residential population in downtown, and there's still a lot more interest in that and growing. So it is a really, growing neighborhood and important as a real mixed use place. It's a
Hmm.
true mixed use district. And, it is the one place in the entire region that really can make a case for it really belongs to everybody.
Right.
Almost every other municipality you're in, neighborhood, whatever, that it really kind of belongs to whoever.
Hmm.
But downtown is for everybody. And that is another reason why it's important, because you don't get those opportunities in our world to really say that about too many places.
Right. Well, so I know with the work that you're doing, we are recording this podcast still in the time of COVID. So I know that working with small business owners and having events, trying to make spaces vibrant, you have been affected. But I would love to know maybe one or two big initiatives that you were focused on before COVID. And then now, not that those have dropped, but maybe the way that how you've shifted your approach to those initiatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we started 2020 having adopted a 3-year strategic plan. And then about 2 months
Everybody
later,
had great vision
the
for
world changed.
2020.
And
Oh,
but the good news is we really evaluated the things that we felt like we needed to be doing for our city over the next 3 years. And many of those things were still valid, or maybe even more important. It may have reordered how you and where you get there, but um, I'll give you a couple of examples of things that we're still working heavily on. And one is 20th Street. 20th Street is the main street. It's the spine of downtown. It needs to be strong in order for the whole of downtown to be strong. And it's seen better days. It's got, it needs a refresh. And so we've been focused on trying to refresh 20th Street, and been developed a lot of partners with the Alabama Society of Landscape Architects and some other landscape architects that have helped us sort of think through what could be some ways to transform 20th Street's landscaping with a better landscaping plan, maybe more manageable, more maintenance friendly landscaping plan, allow us to do a few physical changes up and down the street so that it becomes a strong attractor for business and residents, and it really should be one of those great urban streets of cities anywhere in the country, because it's got everything possible. It's got a great building stock going up and down it. It's got that great investment that was made in the 1970s to green it up first time, and I, I will put it the way that one of the folks that was working on the city center master plan last year put it. If you built and you owned an office park somewhere, and you had your main street running through that office park, and you basically didn't maintain it for about 20 years, the entire office park value would be gone. That wouldn't help you sell it, right? So this is very important that 20th Street is sold. And even now in COVID, it has made it even more obvious how important the public realm is, because we need to be outside more.
right.
COVID has forced us outside a lot more. And you got to have a public realm that can accommodate that. So that's a real strong initiative. And we're kind of trying to move that towards how that can evolve into a stronger public-private partnership between the city and maybe the property owners downtown, to not just refresh it, but have a good sustainability plan, because it's about sustainability of it too.
Mm-hmm.
But another really important thing in downtown is the growth of the Innovation District, which we now call the Switch. That was rebranded earlier this year based on that area's history as a place where you had a lot of railroad switching going on to serve the industrial areas there, but also with technology and innovation going forward, there's a switching evokes technology, and it evokes brain synapses and all that sort of stuff. So that's the rebrand, but it's also very close neighbor to the Civil Rights District. So that whole northwest quadrant of downtown, we're partnering with Urban Impact, and
Mm.
we are, co-leading a visioning and planning process, which is not about just doing a plan. There've been lots of plans done, but really taking the market opportunities, understanding the catalytic things that can be done to really drive that market potential, and have a key consensus and strategy around how to get those things done, so we really can grow the Civil Rights District and the Innovation District, the Switch, together. And if you think about it, all of the major sort of economic development goals and economic development conversations going on nationally, but have been going on locally, is around equitable economic development and opportunities for everyone. And what physical place embodies that more than that northwest quadrant of downtown between the Switch Innovation District and the Civil Rights District and the historic African American Business District? All of that,
Right.
if we really maximize that and make those areas what they can and should be, that becomes a physical marker for us. It says, look at what kind of city we are. You can walk
Right.
down the streets here and you can see it and feel it. You can see this, that Birmingham is a place where everyone can realize their dreams.
Mm-hmm. So what challenges have y'all faced because of COVID? I know.
Yeah, the challenge is, organizationally, of course, every organization is wondering about, resources and how to move forward. We've weathered a lot of that, fairly well so far.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the challenge missionally has been, really refocused our support for business owners.
Right.
The business owners have received the greatest challenge. Obviously, if you're a large employer, like some of the large employers downtown, you did have to change and send people home and learn how to work remotely. And a lot of people have figured that out and been able to kind of keep going. Certainly company culture has suffered, mentorships, internal mentorships, all that stuff is suffering. And I know that people want to get back to normal, but obviously the kinds of businesses that took it on the chin immediately and deeply and painfully were retail, restaurant, businesses that you need to walk into and have a transaction, and
Right.
We were beginning to really see the growth of that in downtown in ways that we hadn't for a long time, since the major retailers left in the 60s and 70s,
Right.
And so those poor folks have really taken it hard. And, we've done a lot of work with that community and tried to, in summer, we did a white paper. We kind of took a lot of folks. We listened to a lot of those folks. We have we studied what was going on in trends and developed what we thought we might see in terms of impact and what may be some things we need to do. Everybody needs to do to really support them.
Right.
So anyway, that became a front line effort,
Right.
for all of us, is just how are we going to make sure we can help those who can survive.
Yeah.
And then, position for, new folks to come in behind them and not lose the momentum around retail and storefront. And again, that authentic business, those local authentic businesses. So we came up with ideas like the Great Receipt Race we did
Yep. That was great.
in August. And, we provided some prizes for people who spent the most money in any given week with local businesses and registered that with us, so trying to drive people into local businesses to help them survive. And, it's a drop in the bucket given the whole pandemic, but I do think those things help a little bit in the cash register, but probably help a lot for businesses knowing they're not suffering in silence. They're not alone. They know
Right.
that people are, trying to help.
Yeah. Y'all do a great job of supporting small business owners. So thank you for that. Okay. So I wanted to ask, I think you've touched on some of the lessons that you've learned, but just share, just a few things that you've learned over your career, not just necessarily through REV Birmingham, but for people listening, some of the most impactful lessons that you've learned leading organizations, growing, starting new organizations that really have molded you into the leader that you are today.
Hmm.
Light
A,
question.
a leader with more gray hair than I used to have.
That's right.
Um,
Oh.
yeah, I mean, you're constantly learning. I've still got a lot to learn, but I think, you know, several things, especially as it relates to mission-driven work and
Yeah.
nonprofit work. Um, you know, Even if you have a fairly specific mission like we do, there's always so many potentially good things you could be doing. And you've got to really have a way to determine what are the most impactful of those things. Because you can create a lot of busyness for you, but are you really getting impact? And I've learned, and then sometimes I have a hard time saying no. I admit it. When some good idea or something comes along, and so you really as a leader have to have a pretty good mechanism for making decisions about what you're going to spend your organizational time and resources on to get the greatest impact towards your mission. And that's not that there aren't other good ideas that are good. It's just they may not be the ones that you need to be focused on right now. And so I think that's hard sometimes to make those decisions, and to also know um, when you've done what you need to do and it's time for a program to end. I mean,
Mm,
you start things that maybe are important and meaningful at the time, and you get this you know maybe in this trap that, well, maybe that needs to keep going, but maybe sometimes you don't. And we've actually, in the time that we've been Rev, um, I would say really in the last couple of years, we've probably gone through some significant changes because we've ended up really shedding some significant programs that we no longer do. And it was, I think, part of this sort of refocusing process that we got on. I mean, if you think about Rev as a startup business, when we merged, the organization together, and you think of it as it was a startup business, and we went through the first 5 years or so, and at year five in a small business, that's like, if you've made it to year five, you're probably needing to really, trim some limbs and
right.
do some pruning and figure out where you're going. That's kind of what happened to us too. And so I mentioned bike share already. We did that
Hmm.
5-year program. Did not see that we needed to keep doing it. I think we kind of established what it needed to do, and so the private market could come in and take over doing that multimodal stuff. We used to be real involved in food distribution with our urban food project,
Uh-huh.
to sort of help get food into communities that were food deserts. And but we were trying to do it as more of a business growth perspective as opposed to just pure food security thing. But that program was great. It ran its course. I'll tell you, we as an organization grew. When we merged, we had about 13 or so people on the staff. At some point, we reached 30 employees, and
Wow.
and it happened quickly. And that was where, and this is the other lesson learned, when you see that kind of growth, you really do have to build the structure for your organization that allows for growth to happen, and you can continue to function, because no longer as the leader are you able at any point to really know what everybody's doing every day.
Right.
I had those small organizations at one point, like, yeah, I kind of know what everybody's up to right now, but you lose that, and you have to have built a structure where your mission is still, everybody's driving toward it. But now we're back down to around 13 or so people, and when we started shedding some programs, we got more lean and mean. Um, so I'll tell you a book that helped me a lot. Some people have heard of maybe the book Traction by Gino
Oh, yeah.
Wickman.
Yeah.
And I feel like Gino takes a lot of great advice that a lot of other Collins and other
Uh-huh.
people have, and then sort of puts it into a practical. Here's how you do all that.
Right. Yeah.
So we tended to adopt that entrepreneurial operating system model and still use it
Uh-huh.
as a way to help us know that we're getting, again, traction, or you might say impact, and really moving
Right.
towards that. So I guess that's kind of a lesson learned. And then the
Well,
hard one, I will say, for
oh,
me personally is, you know, it, don't beat yourself up too much. I mean, I do that a lot, and it's easy as a leader to feel the burden, and then lay awake at night, thinking about all the things you're not doing right. And I think you got to be able to not beat yourself up too much. Having the right people on the bus is critical. I mean,
right.
got the wrong people in places, it's ultimately it's not good for them, and it's not good for you. So uh, don't make those mistakes, and don't live with them for a long time. You know.
Right. So before we end, I do want to ask you about Rev. So you've mentioned it that Rev is a nonprofit organization, and that you have to have payers in order for Rev to implement your programs and be successful. So as people in Birmingham, people of the city who love what you're doing and sometimes may not realize that you can't do it all on your own, how can the city of how can people of Birmingham help support the work that you're doing?
Mm-hmm. Um, well, certainly there, you know, I mean, the obvious way is, we do need financial support.
Money.
We
That's right.
we try to support the organization by a couple of ways. One, we do raise money from businesses and individuals, but we also try to have what we call our contracts, which is, like we manage certain projects or things for other people that are related to our mission. Like we manage the business improvement district downtown, which if you're downtown, the people in the blue shirts, the CAP program, that's the
Right.
CAP program. And that is property owners pay into that like a homeowners
Mhm.
association. Well, we have a contract to run that program, and that's those kinds of things we do pay for. So that's good. But other than that, I would say um, what can help us. I would say a couple of things. One, when you do have some great idea, we're there. We want to help, and we may not be able to do everything for you, but we do want to engage with people. If you have some great business idea or even a great civic idea that would be a part of downtown's potential and growth, talk to us, call us. We want to help steer you in the right direction, because we love to say we love to find passionate people with passionate great projects and feed them. That's kind of why we exist. So don't leave us out of that mix.
Yeah.
Come see us. Again, I can't overpromise that we can do everything, but we certainly uh, want to help drive those things. And I would say just generally, this is not specific to Rev, but generally to the city as a whole, our city very easily resorts to a kind of a negative sense of itself,
Mm.
and the other cities, they have that possibility drive, and Birmingham, we kind of lost that over 100 years ago when we started having outside interests buy up all the industries, and we were no longer that startup, city.
Mhm.
We were really kind of owned by all these outside interests, and so we still have this. And then we went through the civil rights movement, and we had this sort of feeling that we maybe can't do things. So one of the coolest things about the last decade, prior to this year and COVID, was just seeing people start to believe again about Birmingham and its potential and its cool factor and all that. I mean, as somebody who's now been in this work about 25 years, to go the first 15 where you just couldn't get anybody to believe in anything,
Right.
it was such a positive thing to see. Oh my gosh, now it's not so hard to just get people to see the possibilities. It's you know, you know if people already believe in the possibilities, then you can really get some stuff done. So
Right.
I think even though that's not technically directly specific to Rev, really I can tell you it really helps a lot when you've got people in the city, just a general attitude that, hey, yeah, we can go somewhere.
Right.
That's important.
Okay, a couple rapid fire questions that I didn't warn you
Okay.
about.
Hold on.
No, just two actually. So one is, what are your top two, you've already mentioned one, books that if people ask you about leadership or organization, you love, those have been instrumental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Traction. I got one for
Traction.
you.
Yeah, you've already answered that one. I'm glad than that. So as far as the second second book, this is going to be out of left field maybe, but
I love it.
this is not on the list of business books at all. But it's a book Tim Keller wrote about
Okay.
Jonah.
Okay.
He wrote a book about Jonah called The Prodigal Prophet. And if you've ever really studied, Jonah, it's not just about a whale, and there's a lot about, I think of it as a mission-driven work person.
Mm-hmm.
You had Jonah with a calling that at some point, from the very beginning, he kind of didn't want to do it. I feel like that a lot sometimes with my calling. Like, why do I feel like I've got to be doing this work? Because this is hard.
It is hard. Yeah.
But this sense of calling, and there's a lot of cultural, stuff that we still deal with. And so I even though it's not technically a leadership book, I think there's a lot about personal development and leadership and thinking about sense of mission and calling, and of course, who's calling you to do something. So I would put that, The Prodigal Prophet, as
okay. I haven't read that one. So, all right. And top one or two podcasts that you like to listen to.
Well, I like the leadership podcast from Andy Stanley. I think he's got some great things. He's, of course, a Christian minister, but I think he has leadership perspective things that are applied to any organization. So I certainly recommend that. And I like the ones that Michael Hyatt does. Michael Hyatt is the Nashville-based guru, created the Full Focus Planner, and is all about trying to help get you focused on things. He and his daughter do some podcasts together, and they're usually really good. So I recommend those too.
Okay. Well, great. Well,
you didn't warn me about those.
I know. Just wanted to be spur of the moment, truly authentic. And you are. I love it. Well, thank you for joining me today. If you would like to learn more about REV Birmingham and ways that you can be involved, please check our show notes for contact information. And also be sure to follow REV Birmingham on Instagram and sign up for their newsletter, which is really great, at revbirmingham.com. And these are ways that you can keep up with all of the projects that REV is working on and how you can get involved. So we learned from Dave today that the work that REV is doing cannot be accomplished by just the REV team. They need vibrant people of Birmingham to make vibrant places in Birmingham. And thank you to Forge for bringing us this podcast today. If you are tired of working from home and looking for a professional place to work to get work done, Forge is your solution. You can visit workatforge.com to schedule your tour today.
Thank you so much.